Good morning on the West Coast and good evening in Europe. Welcome to the first Conexkt Day series, the virtual edition. Our first session of this event will be discussing designing innovative ecosystems. Thank you so much for taking time to be here with us today because we are so excited to have you. We have designed this series of events so that you can either spend your lunch break or evening with us depending on your time zone, or depending on what's on Netflix. My name is Tiffany, and I will be your host for this week. I work at the intersection of events, marketing, and innovation to design impactful experiences at Conexkt Canada. You can often find me exploring through the mountains, maybe on a bike or by foot, or skydiving in my free time. But enough about me. We have a lot in store for you this week. Before we get started, let's get some housekeeping items out of the way. On our website, conexkt.world/2020, we have listings of all of the speakers and their dedicated session times. Also, be aware of the time zones. We do have Pacific and Central European time on the website, so pay attention to that. You should have received an invitation to create your conversation starter profile. I know I started mine, so make sure you go and start yours. It's a platform. This platform is excellent for digital solutions to foster one-on-one conversation throughout the week. I highly encourage you to use it and take some time to meet with the fellow participants this week. If you are at work or at home, we strongly recommend that you use headphones to avoid echo. We would like to hear from you, so please drop your questions in the Q&A session. We will have Q&A sessions throughout. Whenever you think of a question, just write in there and we will get to you as many questions as we can. So we were looking forward to all of your amazing questions. We will have polls throughout the sessions like this one that I'll pop up on your screen. And we are wondering, where are you joining us from today? Are you here on the coast? Are you over in Europe? We would like to know where most of our base is coming from. We have a couple more answers coming in right now. Other beautiful places in the world. I want to know where the rest of those are from all of you. Let's see what our answers are. And it looks like most are in Switzerland and Canada. Very cool. For those other people in another beautiful place, where are you from? I'm very curious. Also, the theme of this short, insightful talk is innovation crisis. Our team wanted to take some time to reflect upon the events during 2020 and its impact on innovation. It is essential to think of innovative solutions and implement them amid these global crises with a critical lens. This reduces the chance of creating further concerns. We brought the team together to prepare a special week on these topics together with keynote speakers from our communities. We hope that you will leave these sessions with ideas and to ponder and tools to help you navigate these challenging times. Now, to kick things off, we have our session of the week with our first three speakers, Dr. Johann Roduit, Gavin, as well as Katerina Anastasiadis. On our event website, you can find more about our speakers, and we will be putting links to their LinkedIn profiles if you would like to connect with them. Now, on with our first speaker, Dr. Johann Roduit, the architect of opportunities here at Conexkt.
Hi, Tiffany. Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. And welcome everyone from Switzerland, Canada, and the rest of the world. I'm very glad to be here for the week. And we'll start off by talking about designing innovation ecosystem. And we'll have a great panel here with Gavin and Katerina. And our main big thesis is that to create an innovation ecosystem, we need to be intentional about it. And we need to bring multiple actors together, individual, institution, and infrastructure, and then work on policies. And I will focus on the individual aspect of it, how to bring people and how to be innovative too as an individual. And there's two things that I'd like to start with, is to say that before we create an innovation ecosystem, and even before we think and want to create those systems, we need to deal with two things. And one thing is the fear of failure and the fear of what other people are going to say. And this is a big hindrance when we want to create an innovation ecosystem. And that can be on an infrastructure level, but that can also be on a personal level, or also on a level of your companies. And the second one is that we need safety net. If we have strong safety net, it will allow us to be innovative, allow us to take risk, and allow us to create and start new things. So I think those two things are really important at every level, at the level of individual infrastructure, and even at the level of policies. And if we think that, people have tried and fail, and what are we going to do in those in between time when people have not been successful in their endeavor yet. And then at Conexkt, when we try to be innovative, we have come up with what we call 5 starting point, or five trigger points. And I think all those are points to help you start innovative, more so again on an individual level. You can start, of course, with people. You can start with ideas. You can start with project. You might think, oh, I'd like to create a new brand, launch a new service or a new product. Or you might even start with funds. There might be funds available and you don't know what to do with it, or you have funds in the community that are available for a research grant or a project grant or an innovative grant. And then you might think of how can we use this fund to be innovative. And also then with organizations. And I will unpack this a little bit more here in a second. So when you start with those different trigger points, I think a good way to start with is to ask different questions. And one of them, if you start with people, you might think of people that are around you in your community and think, what can we build together with this person? What can we do with this group? With whom could we collaborate? And I think everybody can be innovative. We just need to take some time with people, with individuals, but I think anyone can be innovative and be creative and start something new in their community or in their business. But again, sometimes the hindrance might be the fear of failure, fear of what people will say, or a lack of safety net. And sometimes that lack of safety net can be within your organization or your community or wherever system you work within. And then you can start with ideas. Maybe you'd be, what sort of ideas should be shared with this community? And then you might have some brainstorming sessions or try to find new ways to think about what this community needs. A third way is to start, the third trigger point is to start with project and be asking yourself or your company, what event, brand, product, or service could we develop here? And I'm sure there's a lot of new things that can be developed in every area. Or what new project could the community benefit from? And then the fourth point is starting with funds. What funds are available in the community? What funds are available for this project? And here you might look at different funding agencies or innovative agencies within your country. I know that in Switzerland, there is InnoSwiss, and in Canada, there's also other entities, governmental agencies that have calls for to bring forth innovative projects. And then the last one is what type of organization are needed here. Maybe there's an area that needs a new organization, and how can we implement it there? Or with what organization could we collaborate? So those are just different starting points if you feel stuck with an innovation project, you can start with different areas. And then you can start visualizing it to make it a bit more fun and a bit more entertaining with you or your group. And visualize what people are in the areas or what people are in with your communities. You might have other founders, some experts, some partners, some friends, family members, scientists, and you just write it on the board here, as I show here. Then same with ideas, all sorts of ideas, Y, X, Y, Z, or other ideas or other project that you're interested. And then funds, you can list all the funds that you have come across or that you're thinking about, and then organization in your community. And then just start to play with it and start discovering possibilities and building new ecosystem. So in here I speak of ecosystem, not just something that is big on a macro scale, but also on a micro scale. You can have innovative ecosystem just within your company or within one project. It doesn't always have to be a bigger scale ecosystem of a province or of a country or an area, but it can be, yeah, within your company. And then just mix and match all and see what could come up, what funds could go with what project, with what idea, what people could develop this. And then keep on building. And I think that's the harder point, because you can start from any trigger point, but to make it sustainable, you'll need to keep on building. And here, if you have a project X, you might have the right people, the right ideas, the right project, but you need funds and you need to set up a legal structure. Or with project Y, you might need to find a co-founder or the right persons. Or project Z here, you might need to bring new ideas, but you have all the right people, the right organization, the right funds. So you'll have to visualize it and anticipate what is lacking in your project to create a full-on ecosystem. And then to make it sustainable, you need to have those you start with one trigger point, but you need to have all of this point fulfilled in order for your project to go on and be sustainable. You need to make sure that you have the right people, the right ideas, the projects, whether it's brand, service or product, the funds, and working with the right organization. And so this was a short overview for me. We have the toolkit online available freely for anyone interested to dig a little bit deeper in this. But this was the first mention from my side to start creating an innovation ecosystem. You need to start working with individuals and make sure that those challenges, whereas is fear of failure and fear of what other people will think if you fail, and then creating a right safety net. Those are the two first conditions to then starting with those trigger points and to start your innovation project. And now this is it for me from this short talk. And we will look now with Gavin about how to bring institution and infrastructure together, and then with Katerina with policies. And here we will dig into more so into one case studies of the peripheral area around Vancouver, but I think it's really similar to other areas where you have a big tech hub like Vancouver, and then you have other places around it, and how can these other places can also be innovative. But I've talked enough, and I let Gavin take over.
Thanks very much, Johann. And if you stop sharing your screen, I'll start sharing mine. So what I'm going to talk about today is a project that I'm very involved in working on, which is called Abbotsford Tech District. And what we are really is an effort to create a tech cluster, a tech hub in the peripheral suburban area of Vancouver. So as Johann alluded to, if you look at other areas where you've seen tech clusters, tech hubs emerge, there's a solid history of that happening in areas that are in the suburban or exurban areas of major cities. And in fact, of those that already have a tech cluster of themselves, but where tech is looking for new places to establish, driven in part by affordability and in part by other considerations. So we're a proposed development in Abbotsford, which is again a suburban area about 45 to 50 minutes outside of the Vancouver core. And anyone who's in the Vancouver area knows that it is a major struggle to address affordability, specifically housing affordability in Vancouver. So you sort of have that young generation of talent who are competing for housing which has been unaffordable, and you have companies competing for that talent. So we believe there's a really big opportunity, especially in the post-COVID work from anywhere environment, to start creating opportunity for tech to cluster in outer suburban areas like Abbotsford. Abbotsford has a lot going for it as a jurisdiction, which those who aren't from Abbotsford don't know much about it. I'll tell you a little bit. Firstly, our focus is on agricultural technology as a starting point. We believe there's a huge conversation that's happening right now about food security, sustainability, productivity, labor intensity in the production of food. And Abbotsford happens to be the most productive agricultural jurisdiction in Canada, with the second most productive soil in the world after only the Nile River Delta. So it's an incredibly productive agricultural area with a huge amount of large-scale broadacre farming happening there. So the opportunity to be engaged in innovation that supports that farming sector is absolutely huge from our perspective. We've got strong access to international trade markets. We're immediately adjacent to the border in Abbotsford, and there's also a fantastic airport located there with the potential for direct flights to places like Seattle, San Francisco, and other jurisdictions down that Cascadia corridor. One of the reasons why there's a large cluster of tech workers in Vancouver and the surrounding area is actually that people are in the same time zone as the US, and of course with challenges around things like H-1B visas that would enable people to go and work directly in those markets. The ability to locate people in Canada in that same time zone is very appealing, especially if you've got easy direct connectivity there. There's a bit of a labor cost arbitrage as well. Now, many of those people, for example, there are 800 Microsoft engineers in Vancouver. They're all competing for the same expensive, arguably overpriced housing in Vancouver. If we're able to provide a compelling lifestyle, a very nice environment, a live, learn, work community, the ability to walk to work and have the cultural amenities you're looking for, the outdoor amenities you're looking for in a place like Abbotsford, we think that's very, very appealing. The final piece that makes us very interested in Abbotsford is that there's a lot of complementary things happening. And I'll just, without going through all of the logo soup in this next slide, what I want to point to is that there's a really significant agri-tech and innovation ecosystem that has developed and continues to develop in British Columbia, and particularly in the lower mainland of British Columbia, where we are located. You have an excellent set of academic institutions that have various different ag-oriented programs, tech-oriented programs that are starting to turn to the idea of agri-tech as a compelling area for them to teach and research in. You have a strong commitment coming from private industry and increased levels of investments. You have a growing number of accelerators. You have what's called a supercluster program that's been put together by the federal government, which is designed to financially and organizationally support partnerships between post-secondary institutions and businesses, both large and small. And you have multiple levels of government that are really interested in seeing this sector thrive. So one of the most notable things that really is a framing device for us is a report that came out from the BC Premier's Food Security Task Force, which came up with 4 recommendations around how we can make our agricultural technology sector really successful. We are taking up 2 of those recommendations, one of which is to create a multi-institutional consortium across multiple post-secondary institutions around research and commercialization, and the other is to create an agri-tech incubator accelerator that can be a place that takes small companies and helps them become big companies, that can be one window for innovation happening across the sector. So, to pick up on something that Johann talked about, we're a big believer that people and spaces are a key part of innovation. There need to be places where people can collide and connect and collaborate. There need to be places where people can bump into each other and discover new ideas. Because the typical tech worker doesn't go to San Francisco for one job. They go there for a series of jobs. They stay in a job for an average of about 15 months. So they need to know that once they're there, they're going to have that great coffee shop, that great craft brewery, that great outdoor recreational opportunity, that great physical space that is going to lead them to an opportunity where they can run into their next employer, their next investor, their next partner. And that's what we're trying to do with what we're calling the YOW Center for Innovation and Food Security. To very quickly shortcut what we're proposing to do, we are proposing to invest about $50 million upfront of our own capital to build a physical facility that will host post-secondary uses, that will host formal and informal accelerator and incubator components, that will host a university industry liaison office that becomes a one window where that 16-year-old girl interested in STEM can discover what her post-secondary opportunities are, can discover opportunities to go to multiple different universities, or where that fourth generation family farmer who's looking for some help, either from, for example, a strategic consulting group made up of students from across different disciplines, or from a university researcher, can get the help they need to improve the productivity of their agricultural business. So very briefly, in the about minute or minute and a half I have left, I'll just talk about this life cycle idea. When I think about what we're trying to achieve with our physical facility, with our place, and with the users we're bringing together, it's this idea. I imagine this avatar of, Anna, the 16-year-old girl who grows up on a family farm in Abbotsford. Now, Anna might be interested in innovation. She's growing up on a family farm. She's got that connection. She knows ag in her bones, in her blood. She's got family roots there, but she also knows that today there's not a lot of opportunities for her to get the post-secondary education and the job opportunities that she wants. So we want to be a one window where Anna can come to our facility, discover opportunities, decide where she's going to go get that university degree. And what we envision is in the fourth year of her four-year program, for example, she might come back and take part in a multidisciplinary capstone program where we've got, say, 100 students who are doing business plans for new ag innovation businesses, who are participating in social entrepreneurship around things like challenging food insecurity for seniors, and who are doing consulting work with local ag companies, of which there are many. We envision they become involved in that work. That creates job opportunities for them. It creates a pipeline of innovation, and it really starts the flywheel turning in terms of creating a place where there's a connection between new, young, excited students, existing companies, new companies being started, innovation happening. And with that, we really create the catalyst for the growth of agricultural technology as an innovation ecosystem in Abbotsford and in the broader Fraser Valley, whether it's happening in Abbotsford Tech District or whether it's simply being drawn to the region by the fact that we've flown a big green flag up a flagpole and said, come here, come innovate. We've got the talent, we've got the opportunity. That's my 10 minutes, then I'll hand it back over to, I think, Katerina's up next.
Thank you so much, Gavin. That was a fantastic talk. And now I would like to welcome our last speaker for today, Katerina Anastasiadis. Katerina is the Executive Director at Abbotsford Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Katerina.
Hi, everyone. Just trying to get my video on here. Tiffany, do you mind enabling video, please? Wonderful. Okay, can everybody see my presentation, Tiffany? Perfect. Okay, so thanks so much, everyone. My name is Katerina. I am the Executive Director of the Abbotsford Chamber of Commerce. So I think the irony is here that I'm supposed to be the business pragmatic perspective, and I'm going to be speaking on government and advocacy and the policies that are needed for enabling innovative ecosystems. And my approach is going to be admittedly a little bit macro level and institutional in terms of government and sort of the context and reflections on government before we get into some of the more specific policies that we need, of course, to enable an innovative ecosystem. But we do need also an enabling government environment and context, and that's what I'm going to speak to about first. So this first slide, I know we're thinking about the future, but I'm taking us a little bit back into history. As I was thinking about this speech today and the subject matter, really enabling innovation, ecosystems, and a culture for this, I couldn't help but think about, where we have come from in terms of innovation. I was thinking about how, the governments that really showed the leadership to their states, the empires of the day, they all possessed leading cutting edge technology. And that's what enabled them to be in the strong position that they were to be empires of the day. And I think that that's something that we should be reminded about, and that governments strive to do, but albeit in a modern context. So as I was saying, in order for innovative ecosystems, we really need to see leadership and vision from governments. Governments are of consequence, of course, to our society, to our economic environment, and they've got a critical role to play in innovative ecosystems through the environment that they enable for critical thinking, for the opportunities that they create. They enable, of course, the public policy environment. They help to create a societal culture of innovation through the direction that the government invests its public funds in, through its mandate. And of course, the other thing is governments, their mandates and what they do are a reflection of what society and what innovators and entrepreneurs and businesses tell them. And so that is a really important consideration as well to make when thinking about how do we enable this kind of a policy advocacy environment for ourselves. And so what is exactly necessary for there to be a supportive government leadership to pursue innovative ecosystems is a question. Well, here's a sample of the current landscape. Gavin did mention a little bit about the superclusters framework that the federal government has enabled, which is really about creating partnerships between academia, the private sector, and to forward these types of initiatives together. Canada's 5 superclusters are digital technology, protein industries, the next generation of manufacturing, but also scaling artificial intelligence. And 950 million was announced over 5 years to incentivize large-scale collaboration among industry leaders, SMEs, and post-secondary institutions to develop and scale high potential technologies in Canada. So this is obviously a major area of importance to the federal government. It speaks to the vision and the leadership, and to enabling a framework where multi-stakeholders and partners can come together to really reap the benefits of this and to compete globally. The BC Chamber of Commerce, I highlight this as well because as a network, chambers really focus on, of course, creating a competitive investment environment, competition, creating competition, creating a tax incentivized structure where, we can enable venture capital, competitive tax base. And so these are, agritech is there. Of course, Abbotsford agritech, as Gavin mentioned, is a huge focus for us here locally, but also for the province. Aerospace as well is another sector where we've really been trying to progress. And again, as Johann mentioned, in peripheral, outside of the metropolis of Vancouver, but in peripheral locations, such as Abbotsford, also the interior as well is another area that has been vying for this kind of development. And then as well, the federal government has also undertaken an intellectual property strategy, $85.3 million over 5 years for that as well, to educate, among other things, on intellectual property. So as I mentioned, we are in a global race. It's critical that, that governments, adopt this, this kind of a framework, invest in research and development, venture capital policy and investment attraction, and also very key is investor confidence in Canada. When we are competing globally, we really do need to make sure that we are a strong place for investors to invest, and that we do have those leading ideas and technologies where stakeholders and partners can safely invest and move forward. Otherwise, there's no way that we can really expect to compete, because there are international examples all around us of really innovative things happening. So I think those were just the main sort of highlights on the macro institutional perspective that I wanted to go over and inform our guests of today. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Katerina, for your talk. I will be inviting the speakers back for a Q&A, but I just wanted to remind you that we will be doing questions after, so send your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Also, we are wondering, what hinders you from being more innovative? A poll will pop up on your screen, and we are very curious to know what it is that hinders you from being more innovative. We have a couple more that'll need to come in so far. We want to know. Waiting on a couple more here. Let's see what our answers are. Most people say don't have access to funds and is tied with lack of support in my community. Very interesting. Remember that this is one of 2 sessions today, so make sure you join us back at 11:30 for a second session around creativity in the midst of crisis. But right now, I would like to welcome back our speakers to the screen for a Q&A session. Remember, send your questions in below. Welcome back, everybody.
Thanks, Steph.
Back.
Oh, actually, you guys are, I'm sorry, you guys have a chat and Q&As right after.
Perfect. Thanks, Tiffany. Maybe for the chat, we could maybe comment on this, on the polls that came in with people saying what hinders them from being innovative is lack of support in the community. And so I was wondering for you, Gavin, like who's trying to create this big innovative system in this community, how do you find this the support from the community?
Yeah, that's a great question, Johann. To be perfectly honest, I've been getting really, really great support and feedback from the community. And I think it's one of the most important things. My folks on the call don't know me. So my background is not in agriculture and it's not in tech. My background is in major projects and regulatory. So I'm a very big believer that if you're going to do a major project, and ours is a multi-billion-dollar project, it's really important that you're talking to people in the community and that you're framing your project in a way that brings together different strands of the community, and that ensures, frankly, that people can see the way that they fit into your project as compared to being worried that, you're going to come and eat their lunch. We all benefit by working together in that way. So for me, I think that on the one hand, innovators need to be able to look to their communities and hopefully see support. But on the other hand, it's also incumbent, especially if you're asking for change from a government, which we are, you've got to go out and do the spade work of talking to people and making sure that that they see how you fit together with their ambitions and their strategic frameworks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and thanks for answering this and clarifying for the situation here. And then that can ties in with one comment from Katerina, where you said that policies and policymakers need to bring leadership and vision. And I wonder here, like, to have the support from the community, but also to have the support from policymaker. How is it, like politicians usually they worry of short-term election, are they going to be re-elected? And here we have Gavin trying to bring an innovation ecosystem for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And you mentioned this to encourage, to bring leadership and vision. So how do you, maybe at the Chamber of Commerce or when you've worked with policymaker, how do you ensure this to bring the long-term vision in a short-term mindset?
And that's a really good point and that you've picked up on. And I'm really happy to answer this question because it was also in my thoughts when thinking about today. So, the reality is sorry, can everybody see me? It's having some tech glitches here.
That's right. You'll have to restart your video.
Start.
Katerina, while you struggle with that, why don't I just jump in and briefly throw something in on that question to free you up so you can solve your video? What I want to briefly say is this. I remember a conversation that I had with a former premier of British Columbia where we were talking about policy making on sustainability in this instance. And the frame of reference that somebody used at an event with him was discount rates. Politicians have an extremely high discount rate. Ultimately, as a government, you're looking for decisions, you're looking for kind of responsiveness from the public to what you do that happens within typically, call it a 4-year election cycle. Whereas, for example, the project that I'm working on is a 40 or 50-year project where we're looking at things from the entire duration of that time. So if you're talking about projects that involve a longer term return in the private sector, you've got to reconcile your thinking with the reality that if government, for example, is forced to stomach a difficult decision or to look bad in a 1 or 2 year period of time, well, they're not going to do it. So you've got to make sure that you're kind of doing the work of reconciling your discount rate with theirs, or reconciling the duration and scope of your thinking and creating an environment that can enable governments to get to yes on what you're trying to achieve.
If I could just add, I'm still not able to start video, but I think I can still comment without it. So thanks, Gavin. So I was just going to say as well, it's just a reality that that just needs to be understood is that, government is different than politics. And so when you're an entrepreneur, when you're in business, the chambers themselves, I mean, we have to deal with different governments that come into power and depending on the cycle, and that's not predictable. But if you do have a strong foundation behind, your innovative idea, your project, recognizing that the political cycle is something that, you have to work within. B, having a plan of knowing, okay, a contingency plan and a business case to then show whatever government comes into power that this is strategically aligned with their vision and with their mandate, then that increases your opportunity of continuing your project or the innovation that you're seeking to pursue. And so it's just mitigating that, but being upfront with the reality that that is something that you will inevitably have to face. And so I think it's just being very clear about that and understanding how are you going to make sure your business case withstands that.
Thanks, Katerina, and sorry about the video.
It's okay.
We'll try to see what we can do from our tech side, and we have other questions coming up from the attendees. So I will just read the first one here, maybe for you, Gavin and Katerina. In your opinion, what is the main driver of innovation in your community? And then what is the main obstacle to overcome?
Katerina, do you want to go first?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
In your opinion, what is the main driver of innovation in your community? And what is the main obstacle to overcome?
So I think, in Abbotsford, a key driver for innovation, I mean, definitely the municipal government's direction, but I also think that there are some community leaders that are in our community that have really taken it upon themselves to drive certain sectors. So I'm thinking about food culture, for example. Josh Vanderhyde, who's also a panelist that's going to be speaking, comes to mind right away. So I think it's community activists. I think it's municipal government leadership. And I also think that it's just looking at the sectors around us. There's clear opportunities in certain sectors over others. Challenges, I think, that come to play are the educational awareness for entrepreneurs, for businesses, about opportunities. And so I think that that's something, we need to do a better job of, is educating businesses and entrepreneurs of opportunities, of government programs that there are available to them to pursue.
So yeah, if I can jump on this, I guess the main driver are also multi-layer, right? You have individuals, and then you have people in institution, infrastructure, and as we mentioned in all of our talks, we have to bring all of this multi-level system all together to create and move forward with creating an innovation ecosystem.
Yeah, I think the opportunity around ecosystem innovation is driven by opportunity and clarity. When there is an opportunity for commercial actors to be commercially successful by moving forward with an innovation ecosystem, and there's clarity, that I think is when the rubber hits the road. So I mean, that certainly is what I think we're trying to get right in Abbotsford. There's a lot of great innovative people. There's a lot of great conversations, and I know from being part of them over the course of the last year, which makes me a latecomer to those conversations, it really is about trying to get those all focused and brought together so that people can see themselves and see the role that they play in terms of an innovation ecosystem.
Nice, thank you. And we'll move on to further question here. We have one from a attendee, from Bill. Hi, Bill. He asked you, Gavin, how has COVID impacted your project, for better or for worse?
Yeah, that's a very large elephant of a question, which I will now attempt to eat. So on the one hand, I think from a tactical perspective, if you're a project, trying to move to yes on our project is more challenging because of COVID, because we can't meet with people or talk with people in the same way that we might have done in the absence of COVID. So that's challenging for any project that involves bringing people together and trying to create a shared narrative around how we work together and move forward together on something that requires vision and buy-in. On the other hand, at a more strategic level, I think COVID has accelerated a transition in the nature of work by 5, 7, 10 years, where people are moving toward much more of a work from anywhere mentality. They're moving away from, frankly, traditional ideas of office and employment. HR policies are changing. The approach to where people work from and how they work, the relationship between employer and employee is being fundamentally redefined. That provides us with an opportunity to lean into those changes in the way that we position our project from a physical infrastructure perspective. And it also creates a significant opportunity in terms of the way that the region of Metro Vancouver that we're on the outskirts of is evolving. Because a lot of young people, if you look at real estate statistics, for example, there's been a massive surge in sales in places like Abbotsford, because you have young families going, okay, you know what? I want a yard for my kids to play in. I want an opportunity to have more affordability. And they're starting to push the sort of an outwash plane as those young families, those young innovative people are looking further and further away from the urban core, because they can work in businesses that have traditionally were attached to the urban core while being further out, and maybe drive in 1 day a week instead of 4 or 5. I think where we really stand to fill a gap is that, people are going to want places to work. They're going to want employment drivers in those places. So to the extent that we're able to provide both an affordable housing option, but also a catalyst for the creation of a significant number of jobs that are going to be appealing to young, smart, innovative people, as well as, high-level post-secondary opportunities that let people stay in the community, work in the community, remain attached to their families. I think that creates a massive opportunity for us that was already coming, but has been both expedited and made more visible as a result of COVID and the response around COVID, and just the conversation that's happened as a result.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Gavin. I think it's also part of digitalization, and COVID has accelerated this digitalization and remote work. And we'll have a session on, I think, Thursday on this, on the future of work. And it's similar in other places in the world where you have historically the big tech hub, and then the peripheral areas, mountain areas, alpine areas, or rural areas. But now you can obviously do as good work in those places. You don't have to always be physically, as you mentioned there. So I think that creates both COVID and the digital revolution creates a new space for innovation ecosystem to emerge that are different than what we've seen before with a big tech hub. And I would transition to another question from Craig Toves from the University of Fraser Valley here. And maybe that would be a great question for Katerina and Gavin, of course. UFV a Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation with students engaged in commercialization of ideas. What could the university do to support or drive innovation more broadly? And this we see in a lot of universities, right? They have a center for entrepreneurship. They want to move from research and development to the market. So I'd like to hear you both of you, your thought on this great question.
Mm-hmm. So I can start if that's okay, Gavin, with you.
Really?
So, one of the first things that comes to mind is, having worked in government myself, knowing that there are satellite areas for innovation, entrepreneurship, accelerators throughout the province. And so identifying where those are and working closely with the government on segueing, the university as part of those satellite areas throughout the province or even the country is one of the first things that comes to mind. I know, Gavin, you may talk about this. I know with the Abbotsford Tech District, one of the concepts is to have more space, physical space for incubation and that kind of thing. So I certainly think, though, from working with government advocacy and enabling that kind of a framework, that there are opportunities and more can be developed.
Certainly. I'll start by saying that Craig and the University of the Fraser Valley are really important partners for us. UFV is our core academic partner, and we see what we're doing as being very complementary to their goals. So thanks very much for the question, Craig. I think that there's already fantastic work that has been happening at UFV in regard to innovation. I think the key piece is figuring out what is the way in which we can bring university-driven innovation and industry-driven innovation into close proximity and create as much opportunity as possible for those things to cross-pollinate. So, whenever I talk to people in the post-secondary world, which I come from in part, I used to work at a university. I've been on University Senate and University Board of Governors. I'm very conscious that universities know what their role is. They know what the role of industry is. And the challenge is always to figure out, how do we make these two things kind of fit together? How do we make sure that we're enabling innovation by having the right relationship between post-secondary and industry? And we look at what we're doing as being a way to achieve that by creating a space in which those coexist, that really kind of stirs the pot, creates connection, creates a really kind of nimble relationship between research and commercialization.
Thanks, Gavin. And I'll move on to another question here, and probably be the last question for our first session here. What have been the major points of resistance for creating this new innovation ecosystem, the Abbotsford Tech District? I'm sure, like, when you bring innovation, right, there's again fear of failure, fear of how that will look like, and maybe this idea of safety net we mentioned at the beginning. And then what works have you done or needs to be done to bridge these gaps?
Yeah, this is a really, really great question, and it's loaded with a lot of layers. I think, firstly, and I touched on this previously, it's really important that we're telling a story that people see themselves in, and that they don't see us as being competitive to other initiatives that are happening. So that was sort of one of the first things that I set out to do when I became involved in this project, was to make sure that we were anchoring ourselves within policy conversations that were happening locally, regionally, and provincially, and that we were ensuring that folks who have a role to play in the ecosystem alongside us really saw what we were doing as being complementary rather than competitive. And I make sure that that is front of mind at all times in terms of the approach that we're taking. The other piece is that, really at the end of the day, my specific role in what we're trying to do is to try to create a world in which policymakers and decision makers see what we're doing as advancing goals that they want to see advanced, and bringing new resources to the table. So from the perspective of the provincial government, our effort is to demonstrate to the provincial government that Abbotsford is the right place for agri-tech innovation to be centered in the province. It's the most productive agricultural jurisdiction in Canada. It should also be the most innovative. So, for us, that's putting forward resources, putting forward a plan. I joke that I have to boil the ocean to make a cup of tea by helping to kind of point out how the entire ecosystem fits together and how we can be a connector. So it's about demonstrating the way that we align with the policy objectives of different levels of government. With municipal government, candidly, the big challenge for us is that we need some land use changes. We need to be able to add value to the land that we've already got there. And by doing that, we're able to capture some of that upside and plow it back into that $50 million community benefit that we talked about. So that's really, what we're in the process of doing is there's an inherent kind of negotiation or an inherent tension where I think that there are great, smart people in and around government who understand that private sector folks can create value and that can help to achieve policy outcomes. But we've got to find that right balance where what we're asking for in exchange for creating that value is realistic. So that's really a lot of the spade work that we've been doing over the last year or so as we've tried to move this project forward.
Thank you, Gavin. We still
Can I
have
quickly
some.
add a point to that? So I think that also further to what Gavin was talking about is that, there are competing priorities. And so government is presented with lots of different, ideas and projects. And so it's really critical to also have data that is able to show why government should be investing in X over another initiative. At the end of the day, government is about managing public funds and competing priorities. And I think that, to Gavin's point, overcoming those challenges, you really have to differentiate, what you're doing and be very clear about the obstacles that exist and what you are going to do also to help government succeed and progress through that. And that's the way to enable, your project to move forward, but also to reinforce their policy directions.
Thank you, Katerina. There's a few more questions, so let's see here, and then because we'll have another 5 minutes or so. How can one intentionally approach creating an innovative space in a large bureaucratic organization? So that's a good one. How can you be innovative when there's so much bureaucracy, or the organization is not agile, or something like this? How can you bring this? Any thoughts on this?
Definitely. I'll start with that if that's okay, Gavin.
Please.
So, and again, this is also highlighting another difference when you're thinking about achieving certain policies with government. Government policy is initiated much like individual entrepreneurship. It can be initiated internally or driven externally through feedback. So government can also be understood the government, political, and bureaucratic. And one of the key things to do as an entrepreneur, as a business, is to make sure that you are speaking out if there are any unintended consequences of policy. And so making sure, and this is one of the things that we do as a chamber, and case in point was during COVID, the consistent rolling out of new and better iterations of policy and emergency programs was as a result of making sure that these policies weren't developed in a silo, but were informed by those who are on the ground that are experiencing them. So I think that would be my key piece of advice, is to overcome that challenge, is to make sure that, you do whatever you can through consultations, through feedback, to ensure that these are responsive policies for you.
Yeah, I'll briefly add to that. There's this term code switching which is often used to refer to linguistics, right? So somebody might use one style or one pattern of speech in one culture and with another. I think that's a key part of innovating within large organizations or with large organizations. And it's frankly, it's how I see a lot of my day-to-day work on Abbotsford Tech District. It's being able to understand and mediate between the language and the ways of thinking that might be there within a government, within a post-secondary institution, within an entrepreneurial ecosystem, within a land development context in our case. And it's figuring out, okay, how do we actually reconcile these different ways of thinking about the world? Because they really are fundamentally different, and they might well be geared toward the same goal, but sometimes the disconnect happens because there's just a totally different frame or a totally different way of thinking about the economy or thinking about the world. So that's often the big challenge, is just figuring out, how can I translate a language or an idea or a theory or a thing I want to do from the language of an entrepreneur to the language of a public servant in government. It's not easy, but it's the work that needs to be done in order to enable innovation and big institutions to coexist.
That's
Thank
a
you.
really good point, Gavin. That's a really good point.
We'll have to end this first session, but there's for the panelists, there's a Q&A session. I feel free to answer them. You can type the answer on the Q&A. There's questions for you, specifically Gavin or Katerina. And then feel free also, we've seen a lot of questions coming in, and feel free to use that app that we've mentioned at the beginning. I'm going to put it again here in the chat, conversation starter. And if you want more conversation through the week with the panelists or with each other, feel free to put that. I'll put it in just in a bit. So I think this is it for the first section, and Tiffany's gonna lead us to the next one.
Thank you very much for having us, Johann. Appreciate it.
Thank you for
Thank you so
joining.
much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, speakers and attendees, for this great first session. We are on to a great start for the week. We will have a short break before starting our second session of the day, so we will see you soon.